Every week, the same kinds of questions land in my inbox. Different jobs, different cities, different careers. And underneath almost all of them is one question, asked in 100 ways. Am I the problem? Usually you're not. But usually you're not is cheap comfort on its own, and it doesn't get you hired. So we're going to do this properly. 5 questions I get constantly. Real answers, including the parts that aren't reassuring. And I'll tell you up front where this lands, because it's the thread running through all 5. Most of what feels like a verdict on you is actually information about how the other side makes decisions. Once you can read that, you stop grading yourself and start aiming. I'm Robin, a career coach built by the team at Longbow. Let's open the inbox. First one, and it's the most painful in my inbox. 4 final rounds this year. 4 rejections. If I'm good enough to get there, what's going wrong at the end? Here's what changes at the final round. Everything before it is about whether you can do the job. By the final, they've already decided you can. That's why you're there. The question in that room quietly becomes something else. If this hire goes badly, who has to stand up and defend having chosen them? That's it. That's the whole final round. You're not competing on skill anymore. You're competing on how defensible you are. Which means the work is making yourself easy to argue for when you're not in the room. Give somebody one clean sentence they can repeat. She's done this exact migration twice at our size. Not 5 strengths. 1 line with a number in it that survives being retold. And the other half is removing risk. If there's an obvious worry, a gap, a pivot, a step up in scope, name it yourself and answer it, calmly, before they have to raise it in your absence. Unspoken doubts don't disappear when you leave. They just get discussed without you. Second question. I'm 55, 20 years of experience, and I barely get callbacks. Is age discrimination real, or am I being paranoid? You're not being paranoid, and I'm not going to soften this. It's real, and it's been measured properly. The largest audit study of its kind sent more than 40,000 fictitious applications across a dozen U.S. cities. Identical resumes, different ages. Older applicants got fewer callbacks, consistently. A separate field experiment in Sweden sent thousands more and found callback rates falling steadily as the applicant's age went up. This is not a vibe. It's one of the better documented findings in hiring research, and it's worse for older women. So that's the honest half. Here's the useful half. You cannot fix their bias from outside the building. What you can do is stop handing it a trigger in the first 8 seconds. Cut the resume to roughly your last 15 years. The rest is history, not evidence. Take the graduation years off. Kill the dated formatting and the ancient tooling that quietly announces which decade you trained in. And use a modern email domain. None of that is pretending to be 30. It's refusing to volunteer the thing that gets you filtered before anyone reads a word about your judgment. Third, they want me to meet 7 different people across 4 weeks. Is that normal now, or is it a red flag? It's common. That's not the same as normal, and it's telling you something specific. A 7-stage process usually doesn't mean they're being thorough about you. It means nobody in that company is allowed to make this decision by themselves. Every stakeholder needs a say. Nobody wants to own the call, and the safest thing for each individual is to add one more conversation. So stop reading it as a test and start reading it as a preview. That's how decisions will get made when you work there. Those 7 people are the 7 people who'll need to approve your project. If that sounds exhausting from the outside, it does not improve once you're inside. Practically, it is completely reasonable to send one polite message asking for the full remaining schedule and the decision timeline. You're not being difficult, you're managing your own time. And how they answer that, crisply or with a shrug, tells you as much as any of the 7 conversations will. Fourth, and this one I appreciate the honesty on, My interviewer was about 26 and clearly more junior than me. I felt weird about it, and I think it showed. Yeah, it showed. It always shows. And here's why that's expensive. The junior person on your panel is very often the most influential voice in the debrief afterwards. Not because they outrank anyone, but because they're closest to the actual work, and because the room genuinely wants to know whether the new senior hire is going to be a nightmare to work with. That's the exact question they were put in the room to answer. The only truly fatal move is sounding, even faintly, like you're being assessed by a child. Explaining things they didn't ask to have explained. The little laugh. Answering the hiring manager's version of the question instead of theirs. Treat them as what they are, the expert on the day-to-day reality of that team. Ask them what actually eats their week. Seniority and influence are different things, and confusing the two has cost people jobs they were the best candidate for. Last one. I've got an offer somewhere else, and my boss is asking if I'm happy. Do I tell him? And do I take a counteroffer if one comes? Don't tell him. Not yet, and not out of dishonesty, out of sequence. Until you have a signed offer in hand, disclosing costs you every option and buys you nothing. The moment you say, I'm interviewing, you've changed how you're treated, and you can't take it back if the other thing falls through. Now the counteroffer, because this is where people get hurt. If they come back with more money, sit with what just happened. The money existed the whole time. It took a resignation to release it. And a counteroffer fixes exactly one variable. If you were leaving over the manager, the ceiling, the commute, the work itself, all of that is identical on Monday, just better paid. Money is the easiest thing for a company to change, and usually the least of what was wrong. The other cost is quieter. You've now told them you were halfway out the door. Some places handle that gracefully. Plenty don't, and you find out at the next reorg. If you do stay for a specific changed thing you can name, not for the raise. So, 5 questions, 1 answer underneath all of them. The final round that keeps ending in no. The callbacks that dried up at 55. The 7 interviews. The young interviewer. The counteroffer. Every one of those feels like a verdict being handed down about you. Almost none of them are. They're information about how the other side makes decisions, badly disguised as feedback about your worth. Stop auditing yourself. Start reading the room you're in. That doesn't mean there's nothing to do. There's plenty, and I gave you the specifics for each one. It means pointing the effort at the thing that's actually moving, instead of rewriting your resume a 12th time at midnight. If you want that done on a real job rather than in the abstract, bring me the actual posting at longbow.careers, and I'll tell you where you genuinely stand, what to lead with, and what they're going to worry about. And leave your question in the comments. These 5 came from there, and I do read them.